superstar has arrived in the ATL. It is official. And damn it, I ain't talking about Quavo or my brother Ludacris. First takes in the house. Let's go.
We made it to these conference finals, but we're not satisfied.
We worked extremely hard to be in this moment, but job is not done.
It's now or never, and I never even a minute late.
Look out, here comes Trae. He shoots the three. Bang! They left him wide open.
Now or never, the clock is ticking. My ambitions will outlast the pressure.
The floater to Giannis. Slammed it. Rebound by Clint Capella, up and in. These Atlanta Hawks folks, never, ever count them out.
It's been fun playing with this group. We just keep fighting to the end, no matter what the score is.
Good day. What's going on, everybody? Welcome into First Take on this Friday Eve. Max Kellerman, top of the morning to you, sir. Good to see you. Hey, Stephen A., how we feeling? Good to see you as well. Yeah, but we know when the light comes on, you are always on, sir. I did see you late last night and again this morning, so I feel you. Let's get into it, guys.
Stephen A. Lots of coffee. You need caffeine.
All I have to say is Trae Young, Max. He doesn't need any caffeine. My God, 48 points, 7 rebounds, 11 assists, pulling off the upset on the road. He's young, but he's ready.
We got weapons too. I believe in this team too. I mean, they got some good pieces over there. Got a lot of really talented people, but we do too. And like I said, I believe in this team, and we knew we could get a stop if we just buckled down and got it.
You got to make it as tough as possible for him and make him play a lot of one-on-one. But at the end of the day, he had 48 points, 48 points. He's a great player. He has the ball a lot in his hands, but we just got to make it as tough as possible.
Joining some incredible company, Young tied LeBron James for the most points by a player at age 22 or younger in a conference or division finals game. LeBron had 48 against the Pistons. That was game 5 of the 07 conference finals. But there's another champion he reminds us of, and that is Steph Curry. Max, would you say Trae Young's ceiling is actually higher than Steph's?
Yeah, in the playoffs, which is the only thing I care about. I don't care. See what Stephen A. is doing right now? That's how I feel about the regular season. You know what the truth is? So does the league. Or they wouldn't have 2/3 of the team, 15 teams in each conference. 10 of them are still playing when the regular season's over. So, the real season starts in the playoffs. What happens then? You know what happens then? Now, how many Western Conference Finals? Steph Curry, what is he, 32, 33 now? How many Western Conference Finals he's played in? 5. You know how many Western Conference Finals games he's played in? 27, by my count. How many times he scored 48 points in a conference final? 0. How many conference finals games Trae Young has played in? As soon as he gets there, the first time he gets there, game 1, does something Steph's never done in his entire career, because he's fearless under pressure. Steph is careless under pressure. Steph shimmies in the regular season. Trae shimmies in the playoffs, Stephen A. And I'm going to need a disclaimer for Steph fans pretty soon, like you have for LeBron. He's a great person, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm a huge Steph fan. But our job is to tell it like it is. And Steph, this year, got sent packing this year, playing in a play-in game, because he's playing out of his mind the whole time. And then in overtime, 0 points in the last 3:30. He goes home. Like in 2016, greatest offense ever. Game on the line, last 422 at home to be the greatest team ever, 73 wins. 0 points in the last 422 for the whole team, including Steph. But there was a careless turnover. Trae is Steph Curry, but in the playoffs, he elevates. The answer is yes, the ceiling is higher in the playoffs when it counts.
On a debate show, we disagree, but I'll openly admit, you do have this knack for just annoying the living hell out of me, to the point where, I'm really going to have a problem. I'm really going to have a conversation with the bosses about, I think I need to be paid more for having to talk basketball with you. I really do. So Trae Young shows up in his first year in the playoffs. And because he has obviously looking like a superstar and playing out of his mind, he has this one series, and then we just ignore a 3-time champion in Steph Curry, who's been to 5 NBA finals. And by the way, I've got some numbers. because I know that is near and dear to your heart. Trae Young shooting 34% from three-point range. Steph Curry, a career 43% shooter from three-point range. Steph Curry shooting a career 47-48% from the field. Trae Young at 43. But, obviously Trae Young has the capabilities to have a tremendous upside, but he's not the shooter that Steph Curry is. We all know that. And the same Steph Curry that you talk about was once a candidate when Kevin Durant got NBA Finals MVP one of those times. A lot of people thought it was going to be Steph. You act like Steph chokes in the postseason, for crying out loud, which is completely false, untrue, and just an uneducated basketball synopsis. But I'm just looking at, Steph Curry in all of his years of playing playoff basketball. And I'm looking at career numbers of 26.5 points, 6 assists, 45% shooting, 40 from three-point range. You look at him in the Western Conference, about 6 Western Conference series, 25, was shooting 43% from three-point range, 46% from the field. It's like, what are you talking about? And I'm looking at Trae Young. Trae Young has been spectacular. There is no question about that. But I was covering Game 7 against Philadelphia when he made that big-time shot. He also was shooting 4 of 22 prior to hitting that big-time shot. Last night, he was absolutely sensational, particularly in the first 3 quarters. But he did shoot 4 of 13 from three-point range. And I think it was 1 of 7 from the field in the fourth quarter, or if I remember correctly. All I'm trying to say is that not to take anything away from Trae Young, because he is sensational. And a comparison between him and Luka is an entirely different argument altogether. And that's something that we can get into later on in the show. But to sit up there and say a ceiling higher than Steph Curry.
But it's okay to compare him to Luka, right?
Excuse me?
It's okay to compare him to Luka,
right? The reason why I'm saying that is because they're both young. They both came in the league at the same time. And on top of it all, they were traded for one another.
I got it. Luka has a higher ceiling, potentially. It doesn't mean he'll do it, but he has a higher ceiling than Steph.
I didn't ask you to answer any questions about Luka because we're going to get into that later in the show. We're going to do that.
Yeah,
we don't
you
need to get into that now.
You can't, on the one hand, say, no, he doesn't have a higher ceiling than Steph, but you can compare him to Luka because Luka has a higher ceiling than Steph. Doesn't mean he'll get there, but he has a higher ceiling. Look, this is the bottom line. You brought up finals. Steph has played in 5 finals. He's won 0 finals MVPs. 0. The first time when they won it, and by the way, I'll tell you something else. He's never really won a finals as the best player on his team. The only time he did it was 2015, which should have an asterisk because both Kyrie and Kevin Love got hurt, and it still went 6 games.
Pause for 1 second. You just said he never had that, but then you said the only time.
Yeah, I said it should come with an asterisk. In other words, I don't count.
So he was the best player on his team the first championship.
That they would never have won had the other team not been missing.
Was he the best player on that team?
Was he
the best player on his team?
Would the Bucks have beaten the Nets
if
they had Kyrie and James Harden? Was he the best player on his team?
Yeah, he was that year.
He was that year.
That's all I asked.
Now let me ask you something else. Who won Finals MVP? The point was, it was so obvious that LeBron was twice as good as he was that they had to give the MVP not to him because he didn't play well enough, but to the guy who guarded LeBron. They gave it to Iguodala. The next year, LeBron beat him. Steph was the best player on the team. Next year, he had KD, right?
The next year he was injured.
Now, chest out, he has KD, and he plays better in the finals. Who wins finals MVP? Both times KD. By the way, in 2016, had LeBron not won it, Draymond was about to win it. Still not Steph. And then finally, he doesn't have KD again because KD gets hurt. They lose again. And once again, no finals MVP. That's 5 times in the finals, 0 finals MVPs. Steph is a great player. Are we going to pretend that when it matters most, he's a lesser version of himself? Stephen A, he's a little careless with the ball when it matters most. His shot goes away a little bit when it matters most. The best Steph I've ever seen in the finals was against Toronto. He won a game by hitting some threes late, 1 or 2 times where he really came through. In my memory of him playing in the finals, that's all I can recall where it's like, wow, Steph really elevated in that situation. Trae has a chance to be the kind of player who actually gets better when it matters most.
Well, I sincerely hope that, your soliloquies, your diatribes, and all of that other stuff contributes to ratings, because you're going to be doing most of the talking today because, number one, I'm tired. I'm really not interested in talking to you about basketball because your opinions absolutely, utterly annoy me because they make no sense whatsoever. When you talk about Steph Curry, we talk about the first year. He was a baby in this league. He was still the best player on his team. Also, who he plays with does matter because when you have an elite marksman like Klay Thompson, you also share the basketball as well. We can't ignore that, okay? The second go-round, you know that he wasn't 100%. We've talked about that. Even you admitted that the year that LeBron beat them because they pushed it to the limit trying to get those 73 wins. He wasn't completely healthy.
Give me the excuses for the next 3 now because they're 5.
Did I not shut the hell up when you were talking? Nah. I thought I did. I stepped back, fall back.
Okay,
the point is, Steph Curry, the second go-round, he wasn't 100%. When KD got there, one of those 2 years, it was a legitimate argument as to whether or not Steph was going to be the MVP compared to KD. First go round, KD averaging 35 on better than 50% shooting, going up against LeBron for the first time fully loaded. Obviously, this dude was ready, and everybody knew that KD was going to get that. Second go round, that wasn't necessarily the case. When you talk about Andre Iguodala winning that first MVP, he showed up and he was a big time. He was hitting wide open shots because Klay and Steph were being keyed on and give him a lot of credit. But it was primarily because of his defense as well, which was the same reason why Kawhi Leonard got the MVP going up against LeBron when he was with San Antonio. We have watched Steph Curry put on absolute shows in the postseason. There have been times when he's been a lesser version than himself, just like has been the case with Trae Young. And then there have been other times when he's been every bit what we've expected. Then he comes into this season without Klay Thompson at age 32, 33 years of age, with people looking at him and saying, okay, what you gonna do? Because there is no Klay Thompson. Mm-hmm. Obviously, y'all are here, but y'all are not the same team. And this brother wins the scoring championship and is a top 3 league MVP candidate. Put it on an absolute show. And now we're gonna sit up here and talk about Trae Young in his first playoff appearance, and we're gonna say his ceiling is higher than that of Klay Thompson.
Steph's ceiling is lower than it should be.
Curry?
When it matters most. And Trae just did something Steph's never done in his whole career.
So Steph
the
ain't
first
done
time he
nothing
showed
in
up
the
in the Western
postseason.
Conference Finals.
What's going to make a shot?
Now, I want to go over what you said very quickly right now.
Okay,
First, let's go over every finals Steph was in. This is the only thing I'm asking. Who's the best player? It's rhetorical. He was the best player in the series. 2015, the answer was clearly LeBron. 2016, Steph was not the second best player in the series. It was LeBron and then Draymond. Then the next time he's in the finals, it's LeBron and then KD. He's not the second best player. Then the next, Draymond was going to win MVP in 2016 had they won.
Timeout. Because of his performance in Game 7.
No. He's going to get Finals MVP.
No, I know that because of his performance in Game 7.
So far, Steph has not been the best player in the series ever in the Finals, and it's usually not the second best player. The second time he plays with KD, when KD gets MVP, KD and LeBron are the best 2 players, and then Steph. Not the second best player. And then finally, the last time, Kawhi was the best player. Dude, you got to be the best player in the finals one time. You've been there 5 times. How about the second best more than a couple times?
Not if the conversation evolves around whether or not Trae Young's ceiling is higher than Steph Curry.
Okay.
This conversation, he's going to have to be the best player.
This conversation is not about
moving.
Who's the best player.
I'll wrap it up by saying this, and Max Kellerman, I want to quote you properly. Trae is fearless under pressure, and Steph is careless under pressure.
Yeah.
We'll leave it with that. Buckle up for this take from a very informed party. After KD showed out versus the Bucks, his former coach and Michael Jordan's former teammate had this to say.
He's the most talented basketball player on earth, if not of all time, honestly. He's just so gifted.
Played with Michael Jordan, and
I know.
KD's
I know.
Is right
I think
there.
he's more gifted. I really do. I mean, that's saying something, but Kevin is a entirely different breed. I mean, 6'11", with guard skills, unlimited three-point range. It's just stunning. And watching him this year was really, really gratifying.
That's a lot there. Stephen A., is Kerr right about KD?
No, I don't think he's right. And here's why I don't think he's right. Because if you ask Steve Kerr who'd he prefer, it would be Michael Jordan. And he knows it. And that's the reality of the situation. Now, if you're speaking purely as a skilled situation, then, of course, you understand where he's coming from. KD 6'11" with a 7'6" wingspan and can do things very few humans on the planet can do. He can handle, he can shoot, he's a sniper extraordinaire. He's got long-range capability. All of those things are true. The game was played differently at that particular juncture, but KD could have played in any era. I'm not trying to sweat that. I'm just simply saying that even though the advent of the three-point shot had come into play, the bottom line is it wasn't utilized as effectively as it is in today's game, because back in the day, it was far more physical and you were allowed to do more things defensively, which is why stuff like the Jordan rules came into play, because of the way that he was allowed to be mugged by the Detroit Pistons and later on the New York Knicks, as Max could attest to, from the Ken Bannisters to the Charles Oakleys and Anthony Masons, and the list goes on and on and on. You just had a physical brand of basketball that was allowed. And so because of that, people didn't exercise the use of the three-point shot the way that they're allowed to do today, where you literally can sit up there and get thrown out of a game or get teed up or pick up multiple fouls for having bad breath, for crying out loud. That's how soft today's game is compared to what it used to be. The road to prosperity that you had to endure back in the day was far more arduous than it is today. And that's what you have to take into consideration. So for me, what I hold against Kevin Durant, specifically as it pertains to this comparison or this quote by Steve Kerr, is A, the times that we're playing in now compared to what it was then, and B, the one thing to hold against Kevin Durant. We all know what Kevin Durant is capable of, but it's whether or not he wants to. Kevin Durant, once Kyrie went down, and obviously James Harden was hobbled, was forced to step out of character and to be an assassin. Michael Jordan had that in his DNA from the moment he stepped on the court as an NBA player. That's the difference, and that is why I say no.
Steve Kerr is right, and he chose his words carefully. If he would have said the greatest ever, no. Michael Jordan's the greatest ever. If he would have said the most talented ever, no. I would say LeBron James or Michael Jordan are the most talented ever, even though KD shoots well. And KD shouldn't just be called gifted, because it's one thing to have talent. It's another thing to hone it into skill. KD is extremely skilled. He deserves credit for the work he's put in. But he said gifted, Stephen A. Gifts include size, right? You wouldn't say that size is a talent, but you can call it a gift. It is a gift. And there's never been a player at KD's size with the overall package of talent and skill, athletic ability, and honed craft as KD. He's right about the most gifted. Now, that's different than saying you always have the wisdom to deploy those gifts optimally, right? He's super efficient, but as good as his basketball IQ is, no one's is LeBron's. Just like when I say Kyrie is the most skillful player maybe ever, he's certainly one of them. But that doesn't mean he has the wisdom to deploy those skills running a team the way James Harden does, who's not as gifted, but is better because he understands the game a little bit differently or is able to make himself play that way. Saying gifted for KD points to everything that you always say, Stephen A. 6'11", 7'6" wingspan, can hit infinite range, as Steve Kerr said, can kill you from anywhere on the floor, can also defend. Check, 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 check. Most gifted, most talent plus skill at the size, but not the greatest of all time. I think Steve Kerr chose his words carefully.
Well, if size is a gift, so is mentality. And what I'm saying to you is that Michael Jordan has that mentality that we have consistently clamored for KD to have. For example, one could easily argue if KD had that mentality, he would have been strong enough to offset the strong-headedness and the strong-willedness of a Russell Westbrook in Oklahoma City. And they wouldn't have given up a 3-1 lead to Golden State, and they may have won the title that year. All right, that Golden State lost to Cleveland. One could argue that. One could argue that if KD had been that way, he might have had a couple of titles. One could have argued he could have beaten Miami the year, even though Russell Westbrook and James Harden were relatively young. One could have argued that they would have beaten Miami when LeBron was still in search of his first title, because he didn't run across a KD that had an assassin's mentality. He ran across a KD who was incredibly gifted, but also judicious in terms of making sure the glory was spread and Russell Westbrook and Harden and others would get their opportunity to shine, and he was focused on playing basketball the right way. That same KD departed from OKC and went to Golden State. Why? Because there was a brand of basketball that he wanted to play. And rather than enforce his will upon the franchise in OKC, he said, I'm going to go elsewhere, all right, where it already exists, and matriculate to that, and we'll see what happens. So as far as I'm concerned, if height is a gift, if that size is a gift, mentality is a gift too.
I think
and Michael Jordan had that.
I think that's a valid point. The only thing is that you have to consider, because we're both parents, and you know, and I got 3 kids, you know, in one way, they are the way they are when they're born. Like, they keep that basic personality. But in another way, you know, nurture has something to do with it too. Your environment and the way and what you're exposed to. So that is true for your mentality. But something like size, you're just born with it. That's just a pure gift. I think that's why Steve Kerr said it that way. He's not calling him the greatest. He's saying the most gifted, and I agree with that.
Well, I don't think Michael Jordan should be insulted or anything like that, but I respectfully disagree with Steve Kerr because of the discussion we just had.
Maybe he'd rather have his mentality than KD's size. Who knows? We will leave it there, gentlemen. When we come back here on First Take, CP3 likely to return tonight. And it just so happens to be against his former team playing in their first ever conference finals home game. That game discussed in just a bit. And Devontae Adams with some rather strong words about the MVP. His quarterback, Aaron